ladies and gentlemen, and blessings. Happy Sunday. All right, we're going to get into this some trial. This is, I got the wrong banner. Sorry about that. This is the wrong banner. We actually on day four. And day four, they had the deliberations, the closing arguments, and all that good stuff. So she was basically found guilty for second degree. Second degree. So basically, what I guess they're saying is it wasn't premeditated, which I don't think it was either. And when she was on the stand, and prosecution had their time to question, they didn't really change my mind on that one. Oh well, but you share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section. Let me know, what do you think of this whole trial and everything. So today we're going to be covering the closing arguments, and we're going to get into the verdict. Yes, the verdict. All right. And what you do is, like I said, hit the like button, share me out, and all that good stuff. If you want to catch up some more about this trial, you can look at my past commentary with the clips. I just basically, just did the clips of this trial. So we're going to focus on this. There's another clip I'm going to do. I'll probably do that one tomorrow because I didn't know. I think she had a psychological evaluation. I have to look it up. If it is, I will upload that one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get it. Hit the like, share your thoughts out. If you need to reach out to me, feel free, look in the description, and you will find my email, and we'll go from there. Let's get it. Also, I forgot to mention, the speed is going to be on 1.30. I usually do it a little bit faster when we're doing the recaps, but you should be able to understand. If not, there's a setting button. You can adjust it to whatever's comfortable for you. All right, now let's get it.
You may be seated. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed lunch. I was ready to go forward with the closing arguments. Say, you broke my heart. I felt used. He broke up with me in a disappearing text message. Who does that to someone that they love? I wanted him to feel the pain that I felt. These are the words of the defendant, Latoshia. And earlier this week, we told you that you would hear a lot of testimony. You would see some pictures, you would see some videos, but most importantly, we wanted you to pay attention. And a key part of paying attention is not getting distracted, not getting confused as to who the victim is. The victims in this case are Mr. and Mrs. Perry, not the defendant. The decisions that she made caused them to be victims. And once we're finished here today, you'll see that this case really isn't that complicated. It's kind of easy. She's charged with 3 counts: first-degree murder, criminal attempt first-degree murder, and employing a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony. First-degree murder, and you'll see this in your jury instructions, is defined as a premeditated killing of another. 1, the state has to prove that the defendant unlawfully killed a victim. 2, the defendant must have acted intentionally. 3, the killing must be premeditated. So, what is considered unlawful? Well, what is considered a lawful killing? One example can be the defense of others or yourself. Intentional. What does it mean to be intentional? Does it seem like an accident? Does it seem like a mistake? Your jury instructions say that something is intentional if it's a person's conscious objective or desire to cause the death of another person. Number 3, premeditation. The killing has to be premeditated. And as we learned in voir dire, premeditation doesn't have to be a specific length of time. It could be 2 seconds, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. There's no time frame. It just means that you had to think about your actions and you had time to reflect. That could be as simple as stepping out of your car, raising your arm, and the time it takes you to point the firearm at someone and shoot and kill them. Or in this case, it could be driving to the gun store, purchasing a gun, purchasing ammunition, leaving the gun store, driving 3 hours to Memphis to your married ex-boyfriend's house, and knocking on their door. So this week, we started off hearing from Tabatha Perry. She testified that her husband was an executive pastor in Little Rock, and later he moved to Memphis along with her for a new position at Mississippi Boulevard, a prominent church here in Memphis. She also testified that they knew the defendant. They knew her from Little Rock when he was previously working over there. And on April 4th, 2019, Mrs. Perry heard a knock at her door. When she went to her door, the defendant was standing there. Now, she thought it was odd that Miss Daniels was standing there, but she didn't think too much of it because they had given their address out to several people at the church in Little Rock. After she let her in, Mrs. Perry and the defendant sat and talked about 20 minutes until Brodes Perry showed up. When Mr. Perry showed up, the defendant even told you that they sat and talked for a while. She even took a drink. And once she decided that it was time to go, Mrs. Perry and Mr. Perry led her out of their doorway. And as Mrs. Perry was leading her out of the doorway, she turned back and she saw the defendant reach into her coat pocket, remove a gun, and shoot Mr. Perry in his own doorway. Once she did that, Mrs. Perry looked to her neighbors for help. She tried to get help, and then when she saw her husband lying on the ground, she went to go help him. She pleaded with the defendant, "Why are you doing this? Why is this happening? Please stop." Well, not only did the defendant not stop, she shot Mrs. Perry. And not only did she shoot Mrs. Perry, she reloaded her gun. After Mrs. Perry, we heard from Detective Roberts. He testified that the very weapon that was used to shoot Mr. and Mrs. Perry was purchased hours prior to this incident. He testified that the defendant purchased that firearm at a gun store at around 4:30 that same day in Sherman, Arkansas. Detective Roberts told us that he spoke to Ray Palladino, the general manager of that sporting goods store. From Mr. Palladino, he received the surveillance footage, and that surveillance footage showed the defendant coming in, purchasing a gun, purchasing ammunition, and leaving. Mr. Palladino also provided Detective Roberts with a receipt. That receipt had the defendant's first and last name on it. It had the serial number of the Ruger handgun that she purchased, and the last 4 digits of her credit card. It's the same credit card that Detective Roberts discovered in the defendant's vehicle when he searched it. We also heard from Dr. Curry. Now, Dr. Curry testified that she performed Mr. Perry's autopsy. She testified that the cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds, and the manner of death was homicide. She testified to recovering the bullets, placing them in an envelope, initialing and dating them, and leaving them to be picked up. But Dr. Curry isn't the only doctor we heard from. Defense put on Dr. Bidding. Dr. Bidding was hired by the defendant and her team. And you heard her, she testified that she has testified for more defendants than she has prosecution. And ladies and gentlemen, think carefully about what she told you. She told you that depression and someone being suicidal does not mean that they cannot form the intent to kill someone. She also told you that she didn't even offer an opinion as to the defendant's mental state at the time of the offense. So what do we need? We need an unlawful killing, intent, premeditation. Unlawful killing. Well, there was no self-defense claim, and the only other firearm found in the residence, found in the crime scene, was in a box under a nightstand in a completely separate room. Intent. I wanted him to feel the pain that I felt. He broke my heart. You heard that from the defendant herself. Premeditation. We'll take your pick. Whether it's the drive to the gun store, the time it took to purchase, choose a firearm and ammunition, the time it took to drive 3 hours to Memphis to her ex-boyfriend's house, or the 20-minute conversation she had when she finally went up to their apartment. Criminal attempt first-degree murder. So in your jury instructions, you'll see what's on the screen right here. And that's a lot of words. But the judge is giving you the law. And the best way that I can describe it is that the defendant must have an intent to commit first-degree murder. But they fell short for some reason. The act wasn't complete. And that's how you have criminal attempt first-degree murder. We heard from Tabatha Perry, and she testified that she was shot in the shoulder. After the incident, she was transported to the hospital, and the doctors left the bullet inside of her. It wasn't until later that she had to get it surgically removed. It was causing her extreme pain, and by the time that she got it removed, it was poking out of her back. And even today, 6 years later, she is still suffering from pain from that incident. Now let's talk about transfer of intent. You heard in your jury instructions that Sometimes, when you intend to kill one person, and you don't kill that person, but you kill another person, that is how the transfer intent happens. Tabatha Perry testified that when she spoke to police, she told them that she didn't even believe that the defendant meant to hurt her. But that's okay, because you don't have to actually hit your intended target to be charged and convicted of criminal attempt first-degree murder. As long as you had the intent to kill one person, it doesn't matter that you accidentally shot or you actually shot someone else. Your intent is still there. The only thing that's different is the person that got hurt. Employing a firearm during a dangerous felony. So on the screen here, it says that any person who employs a firearm during the commission of a dangerous felony is guilty of a crime. The state has to prove that 1, that the defendant employed a firearm. 2, the employment was during the commission of or attempt to commit criminal attempt first-degree murder against the alleged victim, Tabatha Perry. And 3, that the defendant acted intentionally, knowing, or recklessly. In addition to Mrs. Perry's testimony, we heard from Captain Draper, Officer McLean, and Special Agent Roxanne. Draper testified that he and McLean were a few of the officers that responded to the crime scene on the offense day. And when he got there, he witnessed the defendant holding a firearm. She refused to comply with orders. Captain Draper testified to the non-lethal force that was used to unarm her. Officer McLean testified to securing and clearing the weapon that the defendant had in her possession. He noticed that there was nothing in the chamber, but yet there was a magazine in the gun. Special Agent Sane testified to the ballistics. He examined the Ruger, the casings, and the bullets from the medical examiner. He determined that all the cartridge cases and the bullets had been fired from that same handgun that was recovered off of the defendant. And now we're back at the beginning. You broke my heart, so I'm going to purchase a firearm. You broke my heart, so I'm going to purchase ammunition. You broke my heart, so I'm going to take that
Jack,
and the
good morning.
and drive 3 hours away to your home. You broke my heart, so I'm going to knock on your door. You broke my heart. I'm going to sit there and talk with you and your wife for about 20 minutes. You broke my heart, so I decided to leave. You broke my heart, so I'm going to shoot you and kill you in your doorway, and along the way shoot your wife. But it's okay, because you broke my heart. Decision after decision after decision. Ladies and gentlemen, if a broken heart was an excuse or a defense to murder, I wouldn't have a job. The standard of proof in this case is beyond a reasonable doubt. Not 100% certainty, not beyond all doubt, not beyond a shadow of a doubt. What's required is certainty that lets you rest easy at night. And now it's your turn. After you consider all of the evidence and apply the law that the judge has given you and use your common sense, the state is confident that your verdict will be guilty as charged. Don't let a broken heart distract you from the human life that was lost. Thank you.
And may we approach?
Yes.
I still can't get over the fact that this woman was going to end her life for this pastor. I'm gonna call him a low life
Jesus,
pastor
I want to
because he.
remind you
Oh,
that
well, I'll
the
finish my thought later.
lawyer's statements are not evidence.
No, I'm gonna finish my thought now. Why am I calling him a low life pastor? Because he's a man of cloth. Why is he um having an affair? I know this is not the only woman. We all saw the videotape. He's passing out his mistress a book, then gives his book to his wife too. And this is a pastor? Why did she get with this man and was gonna end her life, and you was gonna leave your children? You was gonna leave your children for this man. And now these kids have to grow up because this is all on trial. Everybody's making videos talking about it. And the kids have to grow up and be embarrassed because their mother felt that this man was more important than her own children. This is the outright shame. But I do feel it was a crime of passion. I think he was manipulating her for years. I do feel that the wife knew more about his lifestyle, him out here and stuff like that. And this is what happens. It wasn't going to end right. It never does. In these kind of situations, it never ends right. Either someone is going to be unalive or someone's going to go to prison. It just doesn't end right. And she's a therapist. All right, let's get back to it, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me you agree with me, you disagree with me, or what? But I know nobody's really getting into the pastor. This guy was a pastor. People go to him. She came to him with her problems and he manipulated her. He saw her weakness and he used her. Yes, he did. Financially, too. Wow. All right, let's resume.
And you can have no prejudice or sympathy, allow anything but the law and the evidence to have any influence upon your verdict. You must render your verdict with absolute fairness and impartiality as you think justice and truth dictate. So we're going to take a short recess and then we'll be back for the next post argument. So, and we're still not ready to discuss the case. Okay, so I'm going to show you excuse for about 5 minutes and we'll come right back. Five-minute recess.
I'm gonna step down the restroom.
All right, you may proceed. Think we should make our closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We have told you from the very beginning that Ms. Daniels is not denying what happened. She is not saying, I have no responsibility, I have no accountability. That is not our position, and it has not been our position from the first time that we talked in Wood Island. We told you she is guilty of something, but she is not guilty of first-degree murder and criminal attempt first-degree murder and employing a firearm during felony. That is not what these facts illustrate, unless you're looking at them from far, far away and ignoring all of the details and all of the intent. When I was in high school, one of the formative trips that I took, my mom and I went to Barcelona, and we went to the Museum of Salvador Dali. This man had the most amazing brain. He could paint pictures that from far away looked like one thing, and then when you got close up on them, looked like something completely different. And I will never, ever forget standing in the top balcony of that museum, looking across the way and seeing this. And there's a little plaque that tells you, squint your eyes and look at it. What do you see? I saw Abraham Lincoln. I absolutely saw Abraham Lincoln. And then, when you walk back around, they tell you how to get up there. This is that painting close up. It's something completely different. Not only a different picture, but an entirely different emotional response. You would never think that that was the Abraham Lincoln that you had just seen. But that can be the difference between looking at something from far, far away and ignoring the details versus seeing the intricacies of what it is actually made of. I want to talk to you first about Brodes Perry. We've heard a lot about him this week. He was a pastor at St. Mark Baptist Church in Little Rock. He was the leader of the life groups there. He was married to Tabatha Perry. This is what people standing far away saw. But when you got much more close, when you got to know Brodes Perry, the way Latoshia knew Brodes Perry, you started to see a different side. And sometimes even then, you miss it. He was a manipulative person. I know that he is not here anymore, and that is a tragedy. But that doesn't change the fact that during his time on earth, he manipulated the women in his life. He was controlling, and he wanted this lifestyle of ethical non-monogamy. Regarding the ethical non-monogamy, that was, when I talk about the manipulation of women in his life, that was a big source of it. He manipulated Tabatha into thinking, oh, well, this is just something that I thought about. It's okay that you don't want to do it. He manipulated Chriselle and Danielle, who he had the Marco Polo group with, in that he made this whole fiction where his wife was completely on board with this, and he was living this open, honest, and transparent lifestyle where he was ethically engaging in non-monogamy. As a pastor of the church looking for a group of people who would sanction his behavior, he found these women, educated women, and lied to them about this. He manipulated Latoshia in so many ways. But regarding the ethical non-monogamy, his position was, my wife says it's okay, so my girlfriend should not be saying no. Even to Latoshia, he lied about Tabatha being opposed to this lifestyle. When Latoshia got involved, she thought Tabatha was on board with this ethical non-monogamy, and she was not. We heard from Brodes Perry manipulating these women.
Those aren't an issue at home, but I get it, but it ain't an issue. I have been though, so yeah, we talking this was.
I'm bringing the speed down just one little notch, just while he's talking, because I want to make sure I hear this clearly. Okay, we'll get back to it. I just put down to 1.25. Resume.
Subject can get a little more serious. For me, our agreements have been simple, right? No exes, nobody from Jacksonville, Florida, which is home for us, and nobody in the city that you live in, that currently live in, which means nobody in Memphis. That was the case, of course, in Little Rock, outside of Girlfriend, because Girlfriend is in Little Rock. The way that kind of happened is, short version, when she decided to open up the marriage and allow me to be on the inside her. Girlfriend's a therapist, right? And she didn't go there for therapy, but she asked her some questions. And based on this therapy session she had with this other lady. And she was asking her some questions after she had just said, bro, this is what I'm gonna let you do, blah, 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 you know, it is what it is. But from there, she asked her some questions. And so she was like, I just got a couple questions for you. And, they would go play tennis together. She was one of the collective leaders. And so we had rapport, we had rapport. And she asked a question, and it was like, yeah, blase, I'm thinking about this. And what do you think about this? Or what do you think X, Y, Z could potentially become? And I'm sorry, I'm looking to see who was in the cigar lounge, because this is not where I really frequent that often. So I'm kind of careful about what potentially is in here, because I don't want to pass off as I really want to go in and go chill in the back, but not a member. But yeah, I'm trying to make it overflow in here now. But anyway, so the next thing that she shared with her was, my husband like you, right? Well, he thinks you're attractive. And she was like, what? He's like, yeah, I know what he likes, and you think you're attractive. Not that he's been rude or anything like that. We've had conversations. Well, we know we did, because like one time we was sitting around having a watch it. And she asked me, I was like, well, you gotta get it. I ain't gonna get it. I'm coming across with this creepy guy, right? We're trying to spice things up. And in that regard, even though that was even somewhat limited with the idea of somebody watching me, that's neither here nor there. But when the question came up, it was her, right there. She asked, well, who would you want? And that was the first thing I said. She said, I know you like that. I know what. So anyway, so she said, like, you know, and she said, well, if you were interested, just, now I'm not saying that you are, but I'm also saying I've given him this X, Y, and Z, and he may come your way. And she did. And she said, okay, cool. So we had a conversation. And after that, that's when the whole nobody in the city thing came. But it was more like, I'll give you a pass with her because I essentially gave you the alley. But nobody. So I'm trying to figure this. So fast forward, a whole lot of shit, right? Trying to do that. So I've been thinking about the past couple of weeks in terms of expanding, my ethical non-monogamy. It's kind of, so my wife, her and I were chatting over there, like, baby, I got a couple questions. I'm just curious, She knows about everything like that. So I was like, when do you want to know? When do you want to know that there's someone who has my interest and someone who I would like to pursue? Do you want to know the moment that I feel like it's more than just banter? Do you want to know at the moment that I would like to begin to banter? Do you want to know once I feel like it might be a thing beyond banter? Or what? Because this is kind of new for us, right? Because girlfriend, Tasha, that's easy. That's been 2 years. That's been it for the most part. Outside of that, we gone. That's out on my birthday. But it's kind of been easy in that regard. So we're trying to figure out what does that look like. So I'm just kind of really thinking through where I am with that, right? Where in terms of those. So there's a lot of newness. And I said that just to say that there's still. There's still a lot of newness even in this ethical non-monogamy I'm wrestling with. And it's fun, right? It's fun, it's interesting, it's causing us to communicate and chat and really talk again about different things that we kind of, in a real sense, have been settled to some degree. But realizing that in this ethical non-monogamy, we got to keep things in pencil and that.
You listening to this, and you listening to how he was using you as a fool. Ladies, we have to wake up. We have to be more on point because these type of guys will come along, even if it's your pastor. You have to be alert. But she was broken at that time, and this is how they get you. These are how these creeps and these dusties come along. They see when you're broken, there's something going on with you, low self-esteem. They'll listen to you, and then they'll feed you what you want to hear, and then they'll snatch the rug right up under you. That's what he did to her. He just dumped her with a text, a disappearing text, right? Like she didn't mean anything. Then she snapped. See, the whole point I'm trying to say is I hope we can learn from this trial is be careful messing with people's feelings. You don't know how a person is going to handle a breakup. Not everybody do too well with heartbreaks. Not everybody just cry it out and just move on. It's not that easy for some people. Some people want revenge. Some people, they close up. They won't date nobody. They just like, oh, I'm mad at the world. All men ain't nothing. All women ain't nothing. Everybody handles it differently. You don't know how they're going to act. Then some turn around here and want to end their own lives. You was going to leave your children for this dude? Reason.
Some things are pencil pen, right? There's some hard news, but you gotta be flexible in terms of what that looks like. So that's why they're using being sprung and giddy and all that stuff. I think because those flutters or those emotions, right, those initial thoughts are all kind of new and very much new because this person is brand new. Like I don't know Sheree, right? I knew Tasha, there was some level of familiarity there, and that's typically how I've always engaged with her, right? With some level of familiarity. I cannot. Whether being in the same class again in terms of college or something like that, I've never kind of quote unquote cold called anyone. If that makes sense, because I don't think I'm that guy. So, yeah. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I don't know if I'm gonna go in here, but now I'm thinking how far would we go downtown? Because I'm like, there's a lot of folk in there. I don't know if I trust who's in that room right now. Shit. Memphis need to do better with smoking houses, cigar houses. I mean, I'm just, your opinion matters to me because we are in this relationship. But at the same time, like I told us from the outset, I want to be respectful, but I also want to let you know that, your opinion matters. But at the same time, I don't want you to put me in a box, right? Because while we talk about it in theory, this is not the practice part. And with Tabby, perfectly fine with, the situation, because how I've handled and been honest and transparent and open with her with regard to this current relationship, me expanding it is not an issue for me. Basically, she told me, hey, we can talk about it when you think it's worth talking about. But the way that you handle this, I'm fine with, and I trust your judgment because you haven't given me a reason not to. It's on 2 hours away, but yes, we were in Little Rock, so we were literally that, because it was at that point, wife was like, yeah, nobody at home. Like, this is an exception because I kind of threw you that, but no, you ain't dealing with nobody at home. Like, that was Jacksonville, so our heart knows no Jacksonville, which is hometown for us, no exes, and no place in your current city. Those are the hard no's, right? She got an exception because it was there that she realized, well, yeah, I don't think I want him to be dealing with all these people, all these women, and no doubt these women would be in the church because that's all we do is kind of hang around, or in the community or close enough. So it was kind of one of those things. But
those are clips from approximately 13 videos where he talks and talks and talks, and none of it is true. None of it. You heard Tabatha sitting on the stand saying, my hard no's were all of those things and then some. My hard no's were him seeing anyone outside of our marriage. But that's not what he told Rochelle. That's not what he told Danielle. That's not what he told Latoshia. He created this world of lies, this alternate reality in this chat room where he got everything that he wanted. He got validation. He got to have this lifestyle where he was cheating on multiple women, and it was okay. It was okay that he, as a pastor, do those things. That's what those women gave him. And for Latoshia, she gave him whatever he wanted. And Tabatha was his wife. He took and took and took from these women. And the whole time, he was lying to all of them. I want to talk to you about Latoshia Daniels. From far away, Latoshia appears to be a professional, educated, well-rounded woman. She's a licensed clinical social worker and went into a profession to help people. Church member, active in the church, a life group leader, selected among the thousands of people in the church, and placed into a position of leadership by Tabatha Perry. Did you notice in the one video, he said, what I typically do is engage with women from a position of familiarity. He knew how to attract the type of woman that he was looking for. And Latoshia, when you got to know her and you got to see all of the details that make her up, she was exactly what he was looking for. She was so vulnerable because of the happiness being completely drained from her marriage, from the total lack of any emotional connection with her husband of 8 years. The traumatic history that she has had since a childhood, and always being told to keep a good face on. Her history of mental health, depression, suicidal ideations, suicidal attempts. Her dependency on other people. He knew that when he got his claws in her, she would do anything to keep him with her, including keeping his secrets. He also knew that Latoshia would have to keep his secrets because she had just as much to lose as he did. He had to have someone who was in a good job, with a good appearance, because if they found out about this affair with the pastor, she would lose everything. All of her clients, the life that she had built up in the church, her family's opinion, all of it would be gone. And he reminded her of that. From far away, their relationship, it wasn't a fair. It was absolutely wrong. And it was, neither of them took Tabitha's feelings into consideration. Neither of them. And they should have. Tabitha did not deserve that. But especially at the beginning, if you looked at that relationship more closely, there was a lot of love there. Latosha built her life around this man. He liked bourbon, so she started learning bourbon. He liked cigars, so she started learning about cigars. She got him into running with her. They joined a biking club together. All of these things that they built. And this woman who came into this relationship so starved for love and affection was receiving it, finally. And she never wanted that to stop. But when you looked at it more closely, you could also see Brodes behaving in a very controlling way, in a very manipulative way. And Latosha was getting slung back and forth between these emotions of, oh, I love you. No, we're going to have some distance. This back and forth, pulling her heart in two pieces. And I will disagree with the state, because part of something that they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is intent. And one of the things that you have to look at is whether a heat of passion was present. And a broken heart definitely has to do with heat of passion. There is no emotion more powerful in this world than love. When she was with Brodes, Latosha was required to follow certain rules. Rule number 1 that she learned on day 1. You download the Confide app, you use it the way I tell you to, and you only communicate with me in this manner unless I tell you different. Rule number 2, when Brodes took trips, Latosha was expected to be there, and she had to pay her own way, whether she had the money to or not. Rule number 3, Latosha was not to call anybody to come to them, even in the case of a medical emergency. She was supposed to call Pastor Pointer. He knew about their relationship. He would get Brodes help, and nobody would have to find out about Latosha. Rule number 4, Latosha was not to approach him in public. He was only to approach her, because she didn't have a way of knowing if he was with someone for the church or with another pastor that may not know about their relationship. Very strict rules on what and when she could say to him. Rule number 5, when she was in a hotel room on one of their trips, she was to remain naked. Rule number 6, towards the end of their relationship, Brodes added that she should always respond to him with either yes sir or no sir. And Latosha followed all of those rules because she loved that man. And she loved the love that she felt like she was getting. And then things changed. On March the 15th, Brodes behaved in a very different way. He treated her like a piece of trash, like someone who was there for his use, not his love, not worthy of his affection. And something in Latosha broke that day. And she decided that she was going to end her life. And yes, she did want him to feel that pain, because it was so much pain in her. And she came and never once threatened him. There was never a single allegation that she put him in any danger or threatened him or ever even pointed the gun at him. She actually gave the gun to him once he talked to her for about 2 hours. Brodes knew what to say to make Latosha do what he wanted her to do, for good or for bad. And that day, he did get the gun from her, and he took the gun and kept it. She didn't see it after that day. Which brings us to April the 4th. Her gun, Brodes had put in a cigar locker in Little Rock. Latoshia did not have access to that. She did her normal good morning text to Brodes, and finally when he responded, our time has come to an end. And then it disappeared. And in that moment of disappearing, 2 years of a life, of a relationship, of love, was gone. And Latoshia was still emotionally fragile from the traumatic experience on the 15th in March. Still suffering from those pains, but trying to work through it. And she decided that she was right the first time. She didn't need to be in this world. She couldn't be in this world. Not anymore. She had built her whole life around this man. And he broke up with her in a disappearing text. She apologized to her family and tried to make them understand that this is not something that she just thought about, that she's been struggling, and that the struggle was just too much. For this deeply religious woman to feel like God couldn't answer her prayers anymore because she was so deep down in this depression is just heart-wrenching. And that was at 3:14 p.m. on April the 4th. I'm having some technical difficulties. Okay. There we go. And so, after writing that suicide note, she did go to buy a gun. She didn't have one anymore, and she was going to kill herself. Yes, she planned to go buy a gun. That happened. She did not plan to go buy a gun to hurt anyone other than herself. She walked in, and you heard Mr. Palladino talk on the stand about the range of sizes and weights and prices. If you recall, when he talked about 9mm weapons, he said the cheapest 9mm weapons are in the 200s. He said that the gun that she chose is a small gun. The gun that she chose is a light gun. And when she went to that store on April the 4th, she checked out at approximately 4:47 after going through the background check and clearing it. And if you look, that gun cost $229. She bought the cheapest gun they had and just whatever ammunition they told her to get, because this was going to be the gun to take her life. So why spend a lot of money on it? After she left the gun store, she went back to her house. She did not want to stay there long because she was afraid her adult son would come home. Poured the bullets out on the bed, grabbed a handful, shoved him in her pocket, shoved the gun in her pocket, and left after leaving him as much money as she could leave him. I think it was $500. She got in her car and she started to drive. She was not driving to Memphis, Tennessee. She was driving to Jacksonville, Arkansas, to Johnson Park. This was a place that had particular significance to her because of various names associated with it. Tabatha Perry was from Jacksonville, Florida. Her ex-husband's last name was Johnson, and her dad's name was Ray. All of those were men that had hurt her in her life, but that she had also loved immensely. She did not want to commit suicide at home. She did not want her adult son to find her, to have to go through that. She knew that her suicide would be hard on him, but she didn't want that weight on him. At that point in time, she believed her son would be better off without him. As she's on the way to Jacksonville, Arkansas, she looks up and sees a sign. And that sign said, "This way to Memphis." And Latoshia thought to herself, If I can just see him one more time, I can find out why he is doing this, why he wants this to be over. Maybe I can change his mind. Maybe he will see that he still loves me. Maybe he will tell me that I am still worth loving. Maybe he will give me that reason to live. She drove to me. I want to ask, how many times have you been in your car running through thoughts in your brain as they race and you analyze and you're thinking, and all of a sudden you look up and you were like, how did I get here? I was on autopilot. This was not a cool, calm, do-do-do-do-do kind of drive. This woman was planning to commit suicide. This was not a drive to hurt anyone. She wanted to talk to him, not to hurt him. And she did talk to him. She went to the Pocket, which is a cigar lounge in downtown. She knew that he goes there on Thursdays. His wife knew the same thing. It was a frequent place that he went, not just on Thursdays. And Latoshia saw him and did as she was supposed to, walked past him until he acknowledged her. When he acknowledged her, they were allowed to engage, and she talked. They said that they sat there and talked for a long time, so long that the valet pulled the car away. And finally, by the end of the conversation, Brodes had said, look, we can be together if you're going to be okay with the ethical non-monogamy. And Latoshia said, then I want us to tell Tabatha. And Brodes said, okay, we'll go tell Tabatha. You go to the apartment, talk to her about tennis, talk to her about, whatever. Tell her you're in town for a conference. We'll tell her together. And so Latoshia goes to their apartment. It's unclear exactly what time she arrived at the apartment. It was somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, but either way, for the purposes of the timeline, we have that span that we don't have an exact time for. Some things we can get exact times for based on evidence, like that receipt, or if there's a phone call or something like that we can tie exact times to. We can't with this. Somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, Latoshia indicated that she remembered the news came on. So fair assumption there, 9 or 10. And this was in Collierville. Tabatha answered the door, and Latoshia came inside. They sat on that couch and talked for 10 to 20 minutes. At no point did Latoshia ever raise a gun to Tabatha. At no point did Latoshia ever threaten Tabatha. At no point did any indication that she was anything other than happy to be there happen. And then Brodes got home. And when Brodes got home, Tabatha described him as being very agitated when he saw Latoshia. Did he think he called her bluff? That she wouldn't really go? He knew that she was having second thoughts. Did he really think that she was going to go into the apartment and tell Tabatha after 2 years? And she was there. And he was facing down the possibility of having to confess to his wife. And instead of doing that, he offered her bourbon. He talked to her about why she was in this why she was here for a conference. And Latoshia, when he walks in, becomes confused and off balance because she thinks this big conversation is about to happen, and he's just making small talk. Even going so far as to say, well, if you're drinking, we probably need to clear those clothes off the guest bedroom. Latoshia had never been there. And when she was there, Tabatha testified, and Latoshia testified, that she didn't go into any of the bedrooms. She stayed in the main living area. That's a picture of the guest room. How would Latoshia have known that there were clothes all over it? Unless Brodes said, we would have to take all those clothes off the bed. She and Tabatha and Brodes sat in that living room for 10 to 20 minutes, talking, with Latoshia just waiting and waiting and waiting, thinking, well, he's talking about a bed. Maybe we're going to segue there. And he wasn't even making eye contact with her. And at a certain point, he stopped even truly acknowledging her and just started talking to Tabatha. And Latoshia realized He's not going to do it. He's not going to tell her. This doesn't mean enough to him. I don't mean enough to him. So I'm just going to go. I'm not going to bother y'all anymore. She does want to know why. Just as a practical matter, does it make any sense that she was sitting inside of an apartment with a closed door where no one could see in for about 20 to 40 minutes? If she was intending on killing them, why would she not have done it when they were sitting in there in private? Instead of after Tabatha walks out the door into opening it up into the outside. She is outside. Latosha's standing in the doorway. If this was a cool, calm, reflective judgment, why would she wait until that point in time? If this was the plan, why would she have not done it inside the apartment? Does that make sense? But instead of harming anyone inside of that apartment, Latosha got up to leave. And when she got up to leave, Tabatha went first and came out the door, and then Latosha was standing in the doorway, and Brodes was slightly behind her. Tabatha made it all the way down to the stairwell before she realized that Latosha and Brodes were not behind her. When she turned around, she saw Latosha pull out a gun and shoot Brodes. That happened. What she didn't see and what she didn't hear was the conversation that Latosha and Brodes were having at that door, where she said, "Walk me to my car. Be a gentleman. It's nighttime. Just walk me to my car." And Brodes just said, "Tabatha will do it." That emotional whiplash of being on the verge of killing herself to finding this hope that she can have the life that she has been trying to have with this man, to the disappointment of being dismissed by him, to this moment of just indifference, shattered her. It absolutely shattered her. And when she reached into her pocket to find her keys, she found her gun. And when she pulled her gun, that was not a calm and cool and reflective action. That was a heat of passion. She was so emotional in those moments. She did that act, but that was not a cool and calm act. That was a result of passion. As she's firing shots, she's yelling, "He broke my heart. He broke my heart." And when Tabatha starts trying to get close, Latosha tells her to stay back. And Tabatha, who is very confused in the situation at this point, dives in front of her husband and tries to shield his body with her body. And during that process, had a bullet hit her in the shoulder. When she said, "Latosha, you shot me," Latosha said, "I didn't mean to shoot you." And Tabatha even told the police that she believed that Latosha was not trying to shoot her. Tabatha felt like all of this emotion was directed at Brodes, because it was. But it was a lot of emotion. Officers arrive on the scene at 22:36 military time, 10:36 non-military time. When the police arrive, Latosha still has the gun in her hand. Tabatha had told her, "Go, just go. They're coming. I can hear the sirens. Just go." And Latosha couldn't move. She couldn't move. And when the police were yelling at her, telling her to put down the gun, what they saw and what they described was her staring blankly and talking softly to herself and repeatedly putting the gun up to her head or up to her mouth or up to her chest and eventually crouching down on the ground. And Officer Dunlap testified that he would have noticed that that slide was back. and that chamber was empty. He didn't see that. The circumstances when the police got there, they're trained to assess. And they have this thing called the use of force continuum that officers kind of make a judgment on. Do I need to put my hands on this person, soft hands? Or do I need to pull my sidearm and kill this person? And there are things in between. Do you believe that if the police thought that she was about to shoot the officers, or Tabatha, or Brodes in that moment, do you have any doubt that they would have shot the guns that they had trained on her? They opted for a non-lethal force because at that point in time, they deemed her a danger to herself. There is no part of what those officers saw that was cool and calm and reflective in Latoshia Daniels. They saw a woman in an emotional crisis. While the police were there, after Latoshia was taken into custody, they called the EMTs who came and rendered aid to both Tabatha and Brodes. They were then taken to the hospital where they both underwent surgery. Tabatha, thankfully, was okay. Brodes was not. He did die as a result of these gunshot wounds. That has never been in dispute. There are several things that are not in dispute. It's just a difference of whether you look at it from far away or come in close to actually analyze it, to see the details that make it up. Tabatha came in to testify, and she talked to you about what she saw on April the 4th and what she experienced. And she was utterly confused by all of this because she had no idea what was going on. She had no idea why Latoshia would be there because Brodes hadn't told her that he saw her earlier in the night. She had no idea that Brodes and Latoshia had had a 2-year-long relationship. That this woman was desperately in love with her husband. She had no idea. And that wasn't fair to her. That absolutely was not fair to her. But even Tabatha came forward to say that she didn't think that Latoshia meant to shoot her. She also told y'all that she watched the clips that we watched before. She never said any of those things. She never had those conversations. She never had those conversations with Latoshia. She didn't alley-oop him any woman. The hard nose for her was anyone. But he lied to his wife about that. And he lied to Latoshia about that. He lied to Chriselle and Danielle about that. The police department then start their investigation. They took Tabatha's statement. Chriselle actually reached out to the police department to provide them these videos because she believed that Tabatha knew all of this, that this would be so helpful to them because obviously Tabatha knew everything and he was being so honest and transparent that they needed to have this information. Instead, they handed over evidence that showed that Brodes was manipulating all of these women. They collected the receipt. They collected the video surveillance from the gun store. They did a faraway view of what this was. And they looked at it and said, well, she bought a gun, she drove to Memphis, she went to Collierville, and she shot them. None of those facts are in dispute. Not a single one of them. But there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it. When she made that drive, she didn't go straight to Collierville. When she made that drive, she went downtown. Dr. Erica Curry came in and testified, talked about the gunshot wounds, trajectories, things like that. The fact that Brodes was shot multiple times is not in dispute. The fact that Latoshia is the one who shot him is not in dispute. She is not coming here to tell you I didn't do this. She's coming here to tell you that when I did this, I was so overcome by my emotions that I behaved in a way that I would not normally behave. I would note, with the autopsy, it does show no stippling, no muzzle imprint. What that means is that the barrel of the gun was 3 feet or more away. When Latoshia was describing where everyone was sitting, and I believe Tabatha did too, Brodes was sitting directly next to Latoshia. He was in the blue chair. She was on the end of the couch. She was within arm's reach of him. And nothing happened. The other doctor that testified was Dr. Bidding. She is both a clinical and a forensic psychologist. The difference in those two things are one can kind of look at your whole picture and gather information for a legal process, and the other one can gather your whole picture and look at it for a diagnosis process. She does both of those things. And she has a very impressive CV to go along with it. And when she met with Latoshia, she did find a significant trauma history. She did not find malingering, which means no evidence that Latoshia was not being honest in her answers on these psychological tests. She actually found that she tended to underreport her symptoms, which was consistent with her history of always having to put on a good face. Dr. Bidding does not just blindly rely on what someone tells her. She listens to what someone tells her and then compares it to outside sources, especially for that legal process. And she did that here. And she found evidence to corroborate what Latoshia was telling her. She read the police reports, including narratives about Latoshia's appearance on the scene. She read Tabatha Perry's statement describing what had happened. She watched the video of Brodes Perry talking to Chriselle and Danielle about seeing Latoshia at the cigar bar that night before going home to Collierville. He read Latoshia's journals. She read Latoshia's journals. And all of those corroborated what Latoshia was telling her. She had a history of depression, and she would not, the state was right, she would not offer an opinion on her state of mind at the moment of the offense. And that's what matters legally, is at the moment. However, she did have a position about her mental state around the time of the offense. The reason that she could not speak to at the moment of the offense was because Latoshia has trouble remembering those moments, just like Tabatha did, because trauma can do that to your memory. Around the time of the offense, again, corroborating by all of those items of information, she believed that Latoshia was exhibiting depressive symptoms and emotional dysregulation. She was in turmoil. She told you sometimes people who truly want to die are hoping that someone will give them a reason to live. And that's what Latoshia was doing here. When she parked her car in downtown Memphis, she truly wanted to die. But she was hoping with every part of herself that Brodes would give her a reason to live. Latoshia talked to you, and she told you her story. From a young age, all the way up to reaching out to Brodes for counseling, through their relationship, about his rules, about her love, about the fact that he had told her that Tabatha was on board with this. He just hadn't told her yet about Latoshia. She told you about that emotional whiplash that she suffered for that last month leading up to April 4th. She was getting pulled by her heart in so many different directions. And she talked to you about the fact that the moment that her hand went into her pocket was a moment when she was shattering. That was the word that she used. In that moment, she shattered. The timeline in the case supports what Latoshia told you happened. At 3:14, we have a suicide note written, which is before going to buy a gun. She then takes a quick trip home and then leaves for the park. Driving down 440, where there's a split for Memphis. She proceeds towards Memphis and arrives downtown, speaks with Brodes for a long time. Latoshia then drives to Collierville, sits in the parking lot, calls Brodes, starts to have some second thoughts, and Brodes says, no, go on in. Go on in. Latoshia goes to the apartment. Tabatha lets her in. They talk for 10 to 20 minutes. Brodes arrives back home. They talk for 10 to 20 minutes, and then Latoshia says, I'm going to leave now. Police respond at 22:36, again, 10:36 Central Time. And by 10:36, Latoshia is still standing there with the weapon in her hand. If she left Arkansas at 5 o'clock, and it only takes 3 hours to get to Collierville, why was it 10:36 when police arrived? Unless there was something that happened in between. And we know that there was something that happened in between because Brodes made a video saying, guess who I just saw as I'm walking out of the cigar lounge? All of that corroborates what Ms. Daniels came here to tell you. And I can tell you, sitting on that stand is not easy, especially talking about the things that she had to sit up there and talk about. She's not proud of what she did. She is extremely remorseful for what happened that day. When the prosecutor during cross-examination said, you went there to shoot him, didn't you? She said, no, ma'am, I loved him. I would never hurt him. No, that was not my intention because she didn't come to Memphis to hurt him. She was planning on hurting herself. And she walked into that apartment happy to be there in the hopes that she would get some semblance of that love back. Very briefly, I'm going to talk to you all about the law. You have your jury instructions, and there are some that I would like for you to cue in on because they're very important. If you remember during jury selection, we talked about criminal offenses and what's required. And what's required is an act and an intent. You have to have both. When you look at what are called lesser included offenses, the act never changes. The intent is what changes. On count 1, the lesser included offenses are all of the offenses: first degree murder, second degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, reckless homicide, criminally negligent homicide. As I told you, Latoshia Daniels pleads not guilty to first degree murder. I submit that the appropriate charge in this case, as it pertains to Tabatha Perry, is voluntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is an intentional and knowing killing that occurs during a heat of passion. That is exactly what the facts before us in this trial have laid out. Premeditation requires the exercise of reflection and judgment, careful consideration, sufficient freedom from excitement and passion so as to be capable of premeditation. When you are in that emotional state of passion, you can't reason properly. That's why premeditation requires the absence of all of those emotions to truly and thoughtfully judge and reflect on your actions before you take them. The emotions cloud that ability and impair that ability. A heat of passion means any of the human emotions known as anger, rage, sudden resentment, terror, or similar emotions which render the mind incapable of cold reflection. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that that is exactly what we have here. This was a voluntary manslaughter. This was not a first-degree murder. And I told you from day one that Ms. Daniels was not coming here to tell you I didn't do anything wrong. She knows what she did was wrong. She feels that every day. But that doesn't mean that that was a cool, premeditated act. Count 2, the account pertaining to Tabatha Perry, Archie. Criminal attempt first degree, criminal attempt second degree, criminal attempt voluntary manslaughter, and reckless endangerment. Those are the lesser included offenses as they pertain to her. I submit to you that the actions that led to Miss Perry's injury was reckless endangerment. The process that involved Miss Perry getting shot, she actually put herself into that line of fire, and Miss Daniels did not even mean to shoot her. Miss Perry even believes that Latoshia was not trying to shoot her. Tabatha told the police that. Tabatha told y'all that. The police told you that. She tried to shield Brodes, and in the process she got hurt. And that was an unacceptable risk that Latoshia took when she fired those shots. And she should have known that firing those shots in that apartment could have ended up hurting Tabatha. And that's exactly what happened. The definition of recklessly in your jury instructions is found on page 9. And that is where, when you look at reckless endangerment, it will refer you back to the other definitions. That's where you find recklessly. A person acts recklessly when they are aware of but consciously disregard a risk that is substantial and unjustifiable that the alleged victim will be killed. Because it's under the reckless homicide, they refer to actual killing. It's applicable also to the reckless endangerment without a killing. The risk must be of such a nature and degree that its disregard constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of care that an ordinary person would exercise under the circumstances as viewed from an acute person's standpoint. She had absolutely no intention to hurt Tabatha, but firing those shots was a risk that she would. And she did hurt Tabatha. I submit to you that the appropriate charge on count 2 is reckless endangerment. All of these must be proven by the state beyond a reasonable doubt. And we talked for a long time in voir dire about beyond a reasonable doubt. Nope. The prosecution must present evidence that is so convincing that it leaves no other logical explanation for the facts except that the accused is guilty of the charged offense to a moral certainty. One of the elements that must be proven is the intent, is Latoshia Daniels' intent. So if you come down and you have one version of this event where this is a cool, calm, premeditated murder, and you have another version of events where this is a woman who was in an emotional distress, and both of those are reasonable based on the evidence, then the state has not carried their burden as to first-degree murder. The appropriate charge would be voluntary manslaughter. And that burden is very, very high. You can see both of those things if you step back and look at it and understand that while you may see two faces, you may see an apple core. And it's reasonable to see both of those things. No matter which one you looked up and immediately saw, or which one you prefer, both are reasonable as an explanation of what you see in that picture. This is the state's case from far, far away, looking at these facts. Facts that are not in dispute, but they are missing the actual picture and showing you something that isn't really what this was. I'm asking you to look at all of the evidence that has been presented to you over the course of this week and to see the details of what that picture actually is. Thank you.
Any jurors in the room? Say, go.
You've heard all the evidence and most of the arguments. And the assumption at this point, based on our history, is I'm not going to be up here for an hour and a half, right? And I thought about that yesterday and more today, and I hope you appreciate that. But I don't want you to take that to mean that I don't have anything to say about this case, or that I don't want you to understand how significant that the proof is in this case, because it's significant. And it's almost so clear that it just doesn't take a whole lot of time to explain it to you, or to prove it to you. So if I can just take a few minutes to go back through there just to remind you of what we're looking at. The proof is clear even by her admission that she got a text that morning that said this relationship is over. I don't want to be in it. And that shouldn't have been, and probably wasn't, a huge surprise to her. Because for the past months, weeks, she was even going to break up with him at one point. You know, really since he had moved from Little Rock, the relationship hadn't been the same. So what did she do in response to that? And she can tell you, this is what I plan to do. But the proof is she immediately went to buy a gun and immediately drove to Memphis to find him. 3 hours. And that's not disputed. She says, I was going to kill myself. But she wound up in Memphis with him. And she wound up at his house. She was still there when the police arrived. She shot him multiple times and shot Tabatha Perry Archie in the process. I mean, that's overwhelming proof of intentional premeditated murder, and she agrees all that happened. Do you remember there was a discussion, I believe it was in jury selection, about we do things different here than we do in the real world? I mean, I don't really know what that means. Because what we know is that in the real world, Brodes Perry is not here to tell this story. That he was shot and killed in his own home in front of his wife. And we know that Tabatha was shot while kneeling next to her husband, trying to protect him and help him and begging her to stop. You know, there's a lot of talk about reflection and judgment and cool, calm, and collected. Well, she was cool, calm, and collected enough to say, according to her, Tabatha, get out of the way. She doesn't remember anything, but she knows she didn't mean to shoot Tabatha. I mean, that's in the real world. And this is hard, I know. Talking about Tabatha, it's a good time just to point out, I mean, there is transferred intent. And so we don't have to prove she was trying to kill Tabatha. Just that she was trying to kill somebody, and she was trying to kill somebody. She did kill somebody. And in that process, she shot and caused serious bodily injury to Miss Archie. So when you have a case like that, with those facts that line up perfect, I get the text, I go buy the gun, I drive to Memphis, I show up at his house, and I shoot and kill him. You got to come up with something as a defense, right? So the defense is, I'm the victim. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute, but I want to talk to y'all a little bit about who she is, who is claiming that she's the victim in this case. It's an almost 40-year-old grown woman who has a doctorate degree, who has been twice married and twice divorced, who runs her own business, and who voluntarily entered into and started this affair with Brodes Perry. She admitted that. I liked the way he made me feel. I was wanting that kind of relationship at that time. She knew he was married. She had dinner with, she played tennis with his wife. She knew that Tabatha wasn't aware of this affair. You know, that there's rules. Brodes had rules. Well, I mean, one of the rules was we've got to talk to each other on this app that's not easily traceable. Is that a rule? Or is that what you would expect? Two people who were married because they were both married when it started, that they might come together and say, you know, we probably don't need to text each other and email each other on our phones and on our computers, because we got to hide this. Is that a rule? Is that manipulative? Can't go out in public with just the two of us because we don't want to be seen as a couple. Is that a rule? Or is that what you expect? When two people who are married decide they're going to have a sexual relationship and hide it from their spouse. Is that manipulative? Did she ever say anything about he forced me to be in this relationship? Did I miss something with that? Or did she say she liked it? She wanted it to be in that relationship. I can't put your plane tickets on my card. Is that a rule? Is that what you call that? You know, she couldn't make one trip, so she said, So I decided to go on the Jerusalem trip because I couldn't make it on the wherever the other trip was, Cuba or something. So hey, I want to go on this other one because I didn't get to make that one. Is that you're expected to go? Or you want to go hang out with the married guy of my friend at a hotel room in Israel? Which is it? I don't want you to call 911 if there's like some kind of medical emergency. You're staying in a hotel room with the person you're having an affair with. Do you want her calling 911? How does that make Brodes Perry manipulative? She drank bourbon with him. She smoked cigars with him. She knew about his interest in this book. She read the book. She understood that he was interested in this non-monogamy lifestyle. She even tried to recruit one of her friends to help him out with that. A 38-year-old grown woman with a doctorate degree who run a business and has been twice married and twice divorced. You know, one of the things that happens when you kill somebody is there's only one side of the story that gets to be told, because there's only one person that's left alive. And so we spent a lot of time talking about how bad Brodes Perry was. We played videos for his widow and made her sit there and say, no, I didn't know that. He was lying to me. You know, it seems illogical, but it's sometimes easier to feel sympathy toward the person who's still alive than it is the person who died. Because that's the only story you get. And she made terrible decisions. And you feel bad for her because she made those decisions. But they were her decisions. If Brodes was here, would he say, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't done it that way? We'll never know, will we? Did he make mistakes? You know, I want to quote to you from the jury instructions because I think it's important. Because you can't look at her and say, I feel sorry for her because she made that decision. This is a quote. You can have no prejudice or sympathy or allow anything but the law and the evidence to have any influence upon your verdict. So feel sympathy toward her, but don't let that affect your verdict. You'd be inhuman not to feel sympathy toward her. But we talked about earlier, during jury selection, how sympathy and prejudice are not appropriate, and how you look at the facts, and if you determine that she intentionally, unlawfully, and premeditatedly killed him, it doesn't matter how sorry you feel for her. Because you're not supposed to use sympathy. Was Brodes honest? He lied to his wife. He lied to his church. He lied to two people in a book club on an app where they sent videos back and forth to each other who he had never met. You want to be married to Brodes? Maybe not. Did he lie to the defendant? I don't know if we know that. I mean, she knew he was married. She knew they were having the affair. She knew Tabatha didn't know. She knew about the book. She knew he wanted a non-monogamous lifestyle. She knew that early in the relationship. She read the book. What do you lie to her about? Probably more honest with her than he was anybody else. You may lie to her. Lying and being immoral is not a capital offense. Latoshia Jane has also made a lot of choices. She got to tell you she's not proud of them. Brodes didn't. She made a choice to start the affair. She made a choice to continue the affair. She even made that choice after she claims that he made her feel bad in the hotel room to continue that affair. She made the choice to hide the affair. She chose to go purchase a gun after she got that text. She chose to drive from Little Rock to Memphis. She chose to go to the Perry's house. She chose to take her gun into their home. And you'll note that premeditation, if done prior to the act, like, so you can premeditate a murder, and then you can go to do that murder, and you can be overcome by adrenaline, excitement, any other emotion you can think of. But if you premeditated it before you do that, and then you follow through with the murder, that doesn't negate the planning that you did beforehand. Why didn't you shoot him when the door was closed? Think about it all you want to. It's probably hard to pull out a gun and shoot somebody, even if you plan to. You can plan that all the way from Little Rock to Memphis, and it still may be hard to pull the trigger. She made a decision to shoot and kill Tabatha Perry, and she made a decision to shoot Tabatha. One of the defense witnesses was Dr. Benning. What did we glean from her? That's helpful. Because I don't doubt she was depressed, and that's what Dr. Benning said, she was depressed. And I'm not taking that lightly. Depression is an awful disease that affects millions of people. But Dr. Benning said, it doesn't mean that you can't, Dr. Benning said it doesn't mean that they commit violent acts because they're suffering from depression. Depression doesn't cause that, and depression doesn't cause you to lose your ability to plan, use judgment, and she specifically said that that depression is not a cause of impulsivity. So if depression doesn't negate intent and premeditation, it doesn't keep her from being cool, calm, collected, it doesn't keep her from using reflection and judgment, is that helpful to us? You also heard from Dr. Benning about this defense under Tennessee law called insanity. And what she said was, there's a defense in Tennessee. And if a person is of this mental state where you can't appreciate the wrongfulness of your actions, then they can be found not guilty of the crime, because there are two things, the act and the intent. And she said, this insanity applies when someone is not able to appreciate the wrongfulness of their actions because of their mental state. And I said, well, did you evaluate the defendant for the criteria for insanity? Yes, it was not there. Insanity would not, the criteria were not met when I evaluated the defendant for that. You also heard Dr. Benning talk about what she called diminished capacity, which in Tennessee is this: you might still be guilty of something, but you're not guilty of the more serious offense because your capacity is diminished because of your mental state. And again, I asked Dr. Benning, a defense expert, a witness called by the defense. What about when you evaluated Latoshia Daniels for this diminished capacity? Didn't meet the criteria for that. Well, Dr. Benning, the defense expert, what about post-traumatic stress disorder? Did she meet the criteria for that? No. No, she didn't meet the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. Dr. Benning, the defense expert, does potentially wanting to harm herself, does that negate intention and premeditation? Can't say that it does negate intention and premeditation. Well, tell us, Dr. Benning, about her mental state at the time she committed this offense. I'm unable to provide an opinion about her mental state at the time she committed this offense. What about Dr. Bidding's testimony did you find helpful? I found helpful the fact that she said she did appear to exercise judgment just prior to this homicide. And she did appear to engage in planning in the moments leading up to this homicide. So we've talked about she used judgment, had a cool, calm, and collected thought when she told Tabatha to get out of the way. I don't want to shoot you. Dr. Bidding says she has cool, calm, and collected thoughts all day, up to the moments before the homicide. Then we heard from Officer Duncan, who said he pointed, I saw her point the gun at herself. She was holding the gun. When I got to the door, I said, drop it. She pointed the gun at herself. At some point during that day, did she intend to harm herself? I don't doubt that. But I can tell you what she had at that moment. She had the judgment and reflection not to harm herself. She had the judgment and reflection not to point that weapon at the Collierville Police Department because they had a gun pointed at her. Where's the lack of judgment and reflection? Was she devastated? Was she in love? Were her feelings hurt? Had she spent 2 years in a relationship with a married man and she realized he wasn't going to leave his wife? I don't doubt that. Did she know what she was doing? Yes. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for her. It's unfortunate for Brodes Perry's family. Unfortunate for the widow of Brodes Perry. That doesn't change what happened. Did she plan this all the way from Little Rock? And I'm going to change a little bit and talk about something different here. And I want to be very clear about what I mean when I'm doing this. I submit the proof shows that she did plan this from the time she got the text. But I want to talk about why I think that's not required. It's impossible to know what she was thinking because we can't read her mind. Was she planning to kill Brodes and herself? Maybe. That doesn't negate the fact that she killed Brodes and that she did it on purpose, intentionally, with premeditation. Did Brodes ask her to go to his house? I mean, his reaction says no. The history between the two of them says no. A hidden app. Got to have somebody with us. We went 2 years, we hadn't told her. He didn't want Tabatha to know. So the history between them indicates no. So the evidence is contrary to her description of what happened. And again, I'm going to emphasize that because I'm going to make another argument. But I want to read. The evidence is contrary to what she describes as happening. But it really doesn't matter. She's asking you to consider voluntary manslaughter. And the kind of the difference is the killing resulted from a state of passion produced by adequate provocation from the alleged victim, sufficient to lead a reasonable person to act in an irrational manner. Well, there's no question she acted in an irrational manner because it's hardly ever rational to point a gun and shoot a guy 7 times who's not threatening you, doesn't have a weapon, and is not even, there's not even a chance he's harming you physically. No even history of him harming you physically. So that's never a rational act. So the second part of that is very important because it can't be adequate provocation that makes Latoshia Daniels act in an irrational manner because she did. And all you would have to say is, yep, there was some provocation that made me act irrationally, so I'm not guilty of homicide. I'm not guilty of murder 1. It says sufficient to lead a reasonable person to act in an irrational manner. Did what happened to her, is that enough to make a reasonable person act that way? To point a loaded gun at an individual who's unarmed and not threatening you, and pull the trigger not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, not 6 times, but 7 times. Somebody talked to you about the classic law school example of voluntary manslaughter, where someone comes home and they find their spouse in bed with somebody else having an affair. And before they have time to reflect on that or cool down, they kill them, either their spouse or the person they're having the affair with. And that is the classic law school example. Latoshia Daniels doesn't fit the classic law school example. Her spouse was not having an affair. She didn't react immediately to some huge thing like that. Somebody hit my child or whatever. She knew this relationship was coming to an end. And she knew about this affair for 2 years. And she knew Tabatha didn't know about it. So again, it's not voluntary manslaughter. So I want to look at her story and set aside all the other evidence for just a moment. Not conceding there's not all the other evidence, but I want to just set it aside for a moment. What was the adequate provocation? You wouldn't walk me to the door? To my car? That's the only provocation I heard. Because right before that, she was talking, and she even made a decision. I feel like I'm being played, was what her testimony was. I'm embarrassed. I want to leave. Is that a person overcome that doesn't know what they're doing? And she had known since that morning he was ready for this relationship to end. And she had known for months that the relationship was not what it had been. That's not provocation that would lead a reasonable person to act in an irrational manner. It may be provocation that would break your heart, that would hurt your feelings, that would cause you to be really upset and really mad and really regretful, maybe ashamed, maybe embarrassed. She told you why she did this. And to convict, all you got to do is listen to her. She told Brodes. I don't know if he heard her because he had a bullet in his head. You broke my heart. That's why she did it. The evidence suggests that she made a decision to kill him. Maybe herself that morning. But even if she made it when he declined to walk her to the car, it's first-degree murder. There's no time period required for premeditation. Some of the things you can look at, she shot an unarmed, unthreatening person. She was making decisions that she felt like she was being played. She was embarrassed. She was walking to the door. She reached in her pocket and pulled out the gun that she had brought into their home. She didn't go back out to her car to get the gun. Was it for protection from her car to the door, or did she forget it was there? We heard both sides of that story. And she shot him 7 times. And killed him. How can that not be intentional and premeditated? Even disregarding all the evidence except what she tells you, how can that not be intentional and premeditated? Especially considering Dr. Biting's testimony. And all the things she did. Tabatha, get out of the way. Not pointing the gun at the police. Not harming herself. Where was this total loss of judgment? She was hurt, she was mad, she was embarrassed. She didn't like what Brodes had done to her, what Brodes had done to her. I ask you to follow the law, apply the evidence to her, do it. And if you do that, I submit you find that she's guilty as charged on all 3 counts of the indictment. Thank you.
All right, now it's time to select our alternates. All right, Mr. Moore and people will be our jury. I'm going to send you back with the instructions, the indictment, and the exhibits. I think set the firearm. The first thing you will need to do is select a 4-person. And when you have a verdict, you will write your verdict on the verdict form. I will review the form to make sure that it's in proper form, and then I will have the jury foreman read the verdict. So I'm going to show the people who are on the jury excuse the alternates. If you can remain, you can finally discuss the case. So I'm going to show you excuse at this time.
I might just let this play just for a few seconds. I'm going to be on mute. No, it's going to be mute for a second because I have to find the verdict. All right, we're going to get into the verdict. We just heard the closing arguments. Now we're going to hear the verdict. So I'm sorry about that. I have to find it. Give me a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to hear the verdict. Let's get it.
All right, you may be seated. I understand the jury has reached a verdict. Ms. Tarver, you will be. You can stand and read the verdict. Each of the verdict forms.
Do I need to start from State of Tennessee versus Latoshia Daniels, indictment number 25-01253. Verdict form count 1. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as included in count 1 of indictment number 25-01253. State of Tennessee versus Latoshia Daniels, indictment number 25-01253. Verdict form count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of reckless endangerment as included in count 2 of indictment number 25-01253. State of Tennessee versus Latoshia Daniels, indictment number 25-01253. Verdict form count 3. We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty in count 3 of indictment number 25-01253.
Would you like the jury poll?
Yes, please.
All right. I'll start on this end. Is that your verdict?
Yes.
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 Is that your verdict? Is that your verdict?
Yes.
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 Now that you have concluded your service on this case, I thank you for your patience and conscientious attention to your duty as jurors. You have not only fulfilled your civic duty, but you have also made a personal contribution to the ideal of equal justice for all people. You may have questions about the confidentiality of the proceedings. Because the case is over, you are free to discuss the case with any person you choose. However, you do not have to talk to anyone about the case if you do not want to. If you tell someone you do not wish to talk about it and they continue to bother you, let the court know, for we can protect your privacy. If you do decide to discuss the case with anyone, I would suggest you treat it with a degree of solemnity, so that whatever you say, you will be willing to say in the presence of your fellow jurors or under oath here in open court in the presence of all the parties. Also, if you do decide to discuss the case, please respect the privacy of the views of your fellow jurors. Your fellow jurors fully and freely stated their opinions and deliberations with the understanding they were being expressed in confidence. Again, I thank you for your willingness to give up your time away from your accustomed pursuits and faithfully discharge your duties as jurors. You are now excused. I will be back to speak with you shortly, so I'll show you excused to the jury room.
Okay, I'm going to play the clip of what the lawyers have to say. Let's hear the lawyers. Oh, a second. Give me a second to pull it up. Okay, we're going to hear the defense and prosecution, both lawyers, hear what they have to say. Let's get it. Then after this, I will let y'all go. And hopefully y'all have a great and a beautiful Sunday and a great and a beautiful work week. So after this ends, I'm just going to cut it off, okay? So I'm telling everybody, have yourself a great day. And thank you for being here, and thank you for the replay watchers. And share your thoughts and opinions. Tell me, what do you think of this whole trial? Do you agree it's a crime of passion? Or do you feel that, nah, this woman came over there, she intended to kill him? Or do you feel like, no, I think she wanted to unalive herself, but unfortunately, something just backfired. Whatever. All right, share your thoughts. But we could definitely learn from this one. You know, these lovers triangles and cheating, it doesn't get you nowhere. It ends up bad. This pastor wasn't a good guy at all. Let's just be honest. He wasn't. He was out there. And let's be honest, the wife knew for 2 years. How you don't know for 2 years that your husband is messing around with another woman, and especially after he presented a book like that to you? Oh, that's red flag all over the place. You know, this is very unfortunate. All this could have been avoided. Should have never happened. Now she's going to spend, well, she won't be in jail for life, but she's going to be there for quite a long time. And I'm just trying to understand, why did this man get so much into your head to the point that you was going to leave your children? And he knew you had kids too. He didn't even care. He didn't have no respect for your kids because he's doing all the mind games on you. Yeah, ladies, think about that. Ain't nobody talking about that one, right? He never respected her. She was nothing but some cookies that he just wanted to do anything he wanted to do to it. And he listened to her problems. She came to him for comfort, for guidance, and he used it and manipulated. And then come to find out, we got other pastors at the church too. Because didn't he tell her, if I get sick, don't call no paramedic, don't call no doctors. You go call Pastor such and such. I forgot the name of it. The pastor talking about. Now I wonder, Did that pastor he's talking about have a wife? And did she hear about this? To know that your pastor husband with the other pastor, they over here got colds and they looking out for each other for cheating. You reckon your husband out there doing the same thing too? And they all supposed to be the man of cloth. They all stand up in church, preaching the 10 Commandments and everything. What a shame. All right, let me end this. And like I said, once it's done, I think it's like about six minutes. I'm done. All right. And everybody have themselves a great day. Now let's listen.
I mean, I have mixed feelings. From day one, we believe that this was a voluntary manslaughter. We believe count 2, the reckless, was criminal intent reckless homicide was a fair verdict, and we were happy about the not guilty verdict on count 3. So again, we always thought that this was a crime of passion and that there was adequate provocation based upon his manipulation and the things that he did to her during the course of their relationship.
And you all called Latoshia Daniels to testify. Tell me what was the things that you guys thought about when you made that decision.
There was so much of this story that only Latoshia could tell. The police only had so much information, and Tabatha Perry did not have a lot of this information. So there was all of these gaps that there was no explanation for, that Latoshia had to be the one to fill in for the jury. But also, she wanted to tell her story to this jury. She wanted them to understand how she felt when this was happening. And that's why we did push for that voluntary manslaughter and the reckless endangerment, because she was under such emotional distress when this happened that she was not thinking clearly.
When you go to sentencing, will you push the fact that she has no criminal record and try and see if you can get, I think it carries 15 to 25 years, will you try and push for the lower end of that due to no criminal record in the past?
Absolutely. So second-degree murder in Tennessee has, for someone with no prior criminal history, has 2 potential ranges of punishment. There's a mitigated range that carries 13.5 years, and then there is a standard range 1 offender for someone with no prior felonies. That carries 15 to 25 years. We will absolutely be arguing that a woman who is 46 years old and has absolutely no criminal history, and has done so much to try to better those around her, while she was incarcerated. She wrote a book for incarcerated mothers. She wrote a book for the children of incarcerated mothers. She has lived her life trying to help people. What happened on April the 4th of 2019 was not the actions that ever would have happened with Latoshia Daniels if she was not in that state of distress.
And how is she feeling? I know you guys have probably been able to talk to her. How is she feeling right now?
Go ahead.
I think she's a little bit in shock. I think she's struggling with the idea that she's going to probably have to spend at least another decade in prison. But I think she also understands that, this happened for a reason, and the way she handled her previous incarceration, I think she's going to be fine.
Could that prior prison time count towards?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever jail time she had, jail credit she had built up, that'll count toward the ultimate sentence she'll receive in Division 2.
I know you weren't the original attorney on this, but since you've worked with it, what has it been like as you've worked through it, what you've discovered? Has it been like peeling back an onion, or when you got it, was it really already mostly there? The evidence and the proof.
So like I said, this has been a very unique type of case that we talked to the jury about that day one, in that there's actually a disparity of information in our favor in this case, which is very, very unusual. So a lot of the discovery was not disputed information. Where the dispute came was from the mental state, and that could only come from Latoshia.
I think the other big point that needs to be emphasized here is, a lot of times in our society, we only view abuse as physical. And in this case, this really highlighted the mental abuse that she went through with this person that took advantage of her. I mean, he was supposed to be her therapist, and he knew her deepest, darkest secrets, and he used that against her, especially with her being a person that had prior mental health issues.
I arrived late and I apologize if this has been asked. Has she spoken to the pastor's wife since the shooting? And if so, what was that conversation like?
I don't think she's ever.
She wouldn't have been legally allowed to. There would have been bond conditions and other court order prohibitions against contact.
Has she expressed any interest in reaching out to her and apologizing or having a conversation with her?
I think that's something that probably will be addressed at sentencing. Mm-hmm. And just knowing Latasha, getting to know her and the person that she is, I'm almost 99% sure that she will write a letter or make statements to Tabatha about her actions and apologizing for her actions. Because even in their banter back and forth, she was, she didn't want to shoot her. She never meant to shoot her, and she was shocked. I think Tabitha was shocked when she was shot.
Latasha has been genuinely remorseful in all of our communications with her, not just as to Tabitha, but even as to Brodes. Like, this is a weight that she carries every day.
Is she getting mental health therapy in jail, and do you think that therapy is adequate?
She's been out of custody. She has been getting mental health help, and I know that I'm confident that she will continue to get mental health help, and I hope that they offer adequate services, but we won't know until time shows.
How much time did she spend in jail before the trial?
About 4 years. So she's got a little time.
I said I wasn't going to say nothing, but I have to say, she did a phenomenal job for closing arguments, closing statements, closing arguments. I think she did a great job. Prosecution, you did horrible, because when Latoshia, whatever her name is, when she was on the stand and she told her story, and I'm listening, I say, yeah, this woman is telling the truth. I don't think she's lying. I think she wanted to get over here to tell her story like, look, I did shoot him, and what I did was completely wrong, but that's not what I intended to go there for. So as I'm listening to her, I'm waiting for, prosecution to put a little doubt in my mind after what I heard. They didn't. Then the wife was on the stand. I felt she wasn't being telling the whole story. So this is why the jury was like, it doesn't add up. And that's why defense ended up getting what they got for her. Prosecution, no. They couldn't even fight none of the stuff and say it's the truth. When she went and got the gun, yeah, prosecution did show her buying the gun, but what was she buying it for? It wasn't for him. It was for herself. And then with them showing that she took out all that money out of her ATM and leaving her kids money, that helped defense right there. What else helped defense? I don't know, something else. Okay, let me stop. Let me stop talking. Y'all share your thoughts. Tell me if you agree with me, disagree with me. Let me know. Let me know. Just be respectful. That's all I ask.
Her belt.
Will that count toward the sentence?
Yes.
Time served, you think?
No.
No.
It will count as jail credit, but that will not cover.
I thought prosecution was on this one here. All right, I'm gonna have to find the prosecution. I want to hear what they had to say when they was interviewed. Let's be fair. All right, so just give me a second here and let me go and find it. I can't seem to find. It's gonna take me forever and stuff. But you probably you could pull it up on YouTube and find out what prosecution had to say their interview. And basically, I'm sorry, prosecution, but you fumbled the ball. You didn't prove the case. This woman did not. This was strictly clearly a crime of passion, which should have never had happened. Oh well. Defense, you did a good job. You did. You proved it. You proved it. All right. Well, hopefully, like I said, everybody learned from this. Don't be messing around with people's husbands. Don't mess around with people's wives and all this. It's not even worth it. And I wonder what's going on at that church because, your pastor's a little, That's all I have to say because she did mention another pastor. All right, everybody. Everybody had such a great day. Let me stop talking. Adios. Thank you for being here.